It's been attacked. It was then attacked in '67, and the in that land it was attacked, and it took land from its attackers. The Palestinians again were on the losing side, but it took strips of land from the attackers, which is the West Bank, Gaza, Sinai, and the Golan Heights. And then Israel said, "Look, we want to give it all back. But we're not going to give it back because you can attack us from those parts. We're not going to give it back unless you promise us peace. If you renounce violence against us, if you admit that we have a right to exist, we'll give it back." Egypt said yes. And Syria got the Golan Heights and Sinai, and they got it back. Jordan wouldn't do it. Oh, and today you have, the Palestinian Authority, and in Gaza, if you kill a Jew, you get a street named after you. The children are taught from kindergarten that killing Jews is an act of patriotism. And 85% of those countries, people in those countries, when polled, believe that it's okay to kill civilian Jews, and that it's okay, and that Israel has no right to exist, and their purpose is to destroy Israel and to exterminate the Jewish people. Now, Israel, on the other hand, only deliberately attacks military targets. So civilians do get killed, but for example, in Jenin, in the recent battle over Jenin is a bomb factory. It's terrorist bomb factory. But Israel, unlike Russia, which when they have areas.
Near a prison. It's a terrorist.
He's got all the keywords down. To hit those like sensors in the people's brain that are listening to propaganda. No, they're just terrorists. They're just terrorists, and they don't ever hit civilian targets. And Jimmy kind of does debunk that, and he has that prepared at least a little bit further in the clip. But it's like, you're really he just makes it sound like just the people in Israel are just the victims. They are just 100% the victims here, and there's nothing else. That's it. And
yeah, he said a very similar thing with Rabbi Shmuley. So that was that conversation that he had that went viral as well, where he said that 100% of the people in Jenin are terrorists. And he's basically trying to say the same thing here. And he really kind of scoffs at the civilian casualties, but says that they only hit military targets. There's two things I want to say in regards to that. So in July of this year, so from July 3rd to the 4th, there was a 2-day operation from the Israeli government that went into the Israeli military, that did go into Jenin. And that 2-day operation left 12 people killed. So it's not that 12 terrorists were killed, it's 12 people that were killed. And that included 4 children, and another 140 were injured. And there are at least 3,500 Palestinian refugees because of that military operation that were forced to flee their homes, and over 1,000 homes in that camp that were damaged. And many of them are severely damaged, but those Palestinian civilians have decided to return to those homes because they really have nowhere else to go. So him trying to act like 100% of the people within Jenin are terrorists is completely false. There are women, there are children, and there are just everyday civilians. And then the other aspect where he's trying to say that Israel only attacks military operations. We have seen Israel attack press buildings. We have seen Israel attack press individuals, so members of the press. Shireen Abu Akleh is one of the most prominent examples of that. She was killed by a sniper in the head, even though she had a press jacket on. So it's the Israeli military is pretty much completely hostile against any Palestinian. It really doesn't matter whether they are a so-called terrorist or not. And the Israeli military and the Israeli government, just like with labeling people as terrorists, they can very conveniently label any warehouse, any building, any home as terrorist organizations or terrorist dealings so that they can either demolish the home, attack the home, or take the home by force the people that live in that residence to leave, and then take that home, and then they give that home to Israeli Jews. So it's one of those things where, like, if someone was to come to your house, pull you out of it, and say, this is now for someone else because we deem you to be what we label you. I mean, it's one of those, like, are you going to take that sitting down and lying down? I don't think so. And it's the level of depravity that the Israeli military has against the Palestinians, which is why so many people and organizations and other countries say that Israel is an apartheid state because of the disparity in treatment that they give to Palestinians versus the Israeli Jewish citizens.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna mute.
Areas like that in Chechnya or the United States in Iraq, we bomb the whole neighborhood because we're not going to send troops in there who are going to die protecting people.
You're saying Israel does? I know I've covered stories where they bombed schools.
Well, but not
what are you talking about?
never deliberately.
Oh yes.
Oh, in war, listen.
Yes,
war,
that's not true.
Yeah, it is. Israel.
Of course,
the
it's
idea.
true.
Listen, the IDF. Colonel Camp was one of the top military experts in the world.
I've covered these stories.
Well, I understand, and maybe somebody. I'm saying it's a policy. Of course, in war, stuff happens, and you may have individuals who kill a reporter.
Wow.
This drove me crazy because he just starts keep repeating, oh, well, there's a policy, like as if a policy is going to stop people that want to do these things to people. Really? A policy? If there's a policy, is that how it works? A policy just stops everybody from doing anything that they're not supposed to? And you could just see like Jimmy's face. He's just like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. He's pretty dumbfounded, you can tell.
Yeah, I would be.
Yeah.
I would absolutely be.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go back to it. I was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't. When he kept saying it was a policy and how he's going to make excuses, exactly what you just debunked, how they label it as terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same thing.
Who do something like that, but the policy of the Israeli military is always only to attack military targets. Now, of course, that doesn't always happen, but let me tell you this: the politics, the military policy of every one of the surrounding nations and of Gaza and of the West Bank is not to attack military targets; it's to attack individual civilian Jews. That is the target.
Okay,
and it's the opposite of what Israel.
So
does. And by the way,
well,
the $3.5 billion that we give to Israel was part of the Tava and Camp David peace agreement. So we said, okay, we're going to contribute to this peace agreement. I'm making these payments, to Israel. That was our part in it. And that was our promise. And, we get a lot for that money. So anyway, I could talk about it a long time.
So let me I have to push back on you a little bit on that.
I'm happy to. I'm happy for the opportunity to explain my position.
So here you're talking about how they inside the hospital premises, Israeli military rained down tear gas and bombs. That's there. They also use.
Yeah, but this is Jenin. Now in Jenin,
you're talking about.
In Jenin, you're looking at Jenin here. Not a single civilian died, and the IDF risked lives to go in there and do door-to-door.
But they did
combat.
but they also did bomb it. They
but the terror. Listen,
right with jets, with military jets, they did.
No, but nobody died. The terrorists are put deliberately with the bomb facilities in hospitals or near them or near schools in order to for.
The amount of excuses that he comes up with. Oh, but nobody died. But how many people died as a result of a hospital being bombed? Oh, and they put the
Exactly.
people purposefully there. Well, so that's an excuse. Like, it's an excuse. Like, he just keeps going on with more and more excuses.
Yeah, and he keeps feeding into this narrative that Jenin is 100% filled with terrorists, and that the Israeli military is only trying to attack so-called military or terrorist organizations and activities, and then they put their soldiers on the ground to go door to door. The Israeli military already does shit like that in hundreds of places within Palestine, because that's how they do some of their most fear-mongering aggressive tactics. Children are suffering all over Palestine. And it's because of things like this, because they live in a severely traumatic and hostile environment that they did not choose for themselves. And children are, like, specifically children in Gaza is something that I covered last year around this time. It's like 1 in 3 Palestinian children in Gaza contemplate suicide. And these are really young children that range from like 8 years old to about 13, 14 years old. And caregivers are dealing with the same thing. Parents are dealing with the same thing. Everyone is dealing with really serious mental health crises because of the situation that's happening. And that's one of the things that he seems to just kind of be conveniently not wanting to be like, this is where I wish Jimmy had some of this stuff so that he could rebut what RFK is saying. Because regardless of whether you agree with Israel or Palestine, it's the children that are suffering. And I would say on both sides of this, both Jewish children and Palestinian children are suffering, and they're in an environment that's extremely hostile. And children are not born to be racist. They are not born to be segregationists. They're not born to be apartheidists. They are born to learn and to grow. And one of the most really devastating things that I learned about Gazan children is that they just want to be able to go to school safely. And they want to be able to use that education and go to university and to have jobs. And that's something that they already, in their very young teens, are already experiencing as, maybe I won't even wake up tomorrow. And this is the reality for so many Palestinians, not just children, but Palestinians in general. They're just like, I don't even know if I will be at that dinner table with my family tomorrow. And there's entire families that have been wiped out. There's like one sole survivor, one child that will live when Israel bombs their homes. So the way that he's acting and pushing this off to sound so separate from the reality, the lack of empathy,
the policy. It's about the policy as opposed to having actual empathy for the people that are directly affected by this. I mean, like, I can't imagine. And we know that trauma gets passed on through our DNA. So these children are if they do grow up to be old enough, because I mean the population is, I mean, like there's mostly very young people, and they're getting, the Palestinian people are being wiped out, and it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. So if they do grow up, they're growing up in trauma, and they're going to pass that on, and it's going to keep that cycle going.
That's very true. There's something, I follow a few different Palestine organizations and just like promoters of the Palestine situation on Instagram. And one of the most common things that I see that breaks my heart every single time is showing Palestinian mothers. And it's like a meme that's been started saying that Palestinian mothers carry their children, predominantly their sons, twice. They carry them in the womb, and then they carry them at the end of their life. And it's one of those things that's sadly really true. And the reality is that Palestinians are, like, especially young Palestinian men, are very prone to being killed by the Israeli military because that's who they want to target. And if you look at some of the extreme views, so the very far right-wing members within the Israeli government that want to just completely decimate all of the Palestinians, they basically want to genocide the Palestinians. And that is rhetoric that gets fed into the Israeli military. And one of the things that I'm going to be showing on my video that's going to be coming out soon is there were members within the IDF that made shirts that because they were snipers, and it showed a pregnant Palestinian woman and it said 1 shot, 2 kills. And this is something that this was back in like 2014. But if we're going to act like this isn't something that's still within the ethos, the way that they think, it's like, I'm sorry, but you're sadly mistaken. This is something that they purposely do, that they're purposely wanting to kill pregnant Palestinian women and young Palestinian men. It's so that they can do the harshest of harsh things that they can do, which is to cleanse the area and the region of Palestinians, which is just so ironic because that's what was that's what the whole Holocaust was about, was that the Jews were suffering from Nazi Germans. And, you know, we look at things like Auschwitz and the horrible crimes that were committed against the Jews. They did deserve a safe place to go. They deserved to be saved. And I can say that as someone who is half Palestinian and whose father is a Palestinian refugee. Like, my father was born in 1946. So by 1948, he was a refugee. He was a baby and a refugee within his own country, and his family lost everything. So I have the passion, I have the rage, and I have the anger that comes from that generational trauma that my father passed down to me. But I am in no way going to act like Jews did not suffer under the Nazi regime, because they did. But when I see this kind of rhetoric, when I see the indiscriminate actions that are going against Palestinians from the Israeli military, I cannot help but see the hypocrisy in this, because it's, while they're not being thrown in gas chambers, it's not too far from that. We're not too far from that. And it's a radical thing to say. And I apologize to anyone I'm offending. But the reality is that this is what Palestinians experience, and this is how Palestinians feel. And Palestinians are so often conveniently left out of these conversations. I appreciate that someone like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and Katie Harper are going to talk about these issues from the Jewish perspective. I appreciate that. But I want to see, and I hope to see, more Palestinian voices, more Arab voices that can come with more understanding and connection to this. And it seems like we are almost always conveniently left out of the conversation because it's too close, and they don't want to hear the anger and rage that we can have when we bring this up, because they want to throw epithets at us like, oh, you're anti-Semitic. And it's like, absolutely not. I can acknowledge what has happened to the Jews and the atrocities that were committed against them, but I will not act like the same thing isn't happening to Palestinians, because these are my people. This is my family. My father experienced so much oppression to the point where he had to leave. Like, it's why he had to leave that country, because as a young man, he was going to be targeted and threatened. And it was like, what, he didn't want to raise a family there. And I don't blame him. So sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but
no, this is why I had you on to talk about it. This is exactly why I was like, we need to have this conversation and have the long form conversation about this. This is exactly why.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think that this is really important. And I think that your words are very powerful, and you're very articulate in how you say them. And, you're very intentional in how you say them. And that really matters, because it shows how well educated you are on this and how much passion that you have for this. It's not just a fly by night thing. It's not just like, a casual thing for you. And that's why I was like, I need to have her on, because like, it's really important. You can talk on this in a way that I can't talk about it. I can't give this context in the same way, because I'm not Palestinian. Like, that's exactly what we do here, is to have the conversations with the people that, so they can talk about it from their perspective and give you the opportunity. It's exactly why we do it.
And thank you so much for providing the platform. I really do. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate having you here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute us again and bring this back.
That is deliberate military
Okay.
strategy by them.
I'm the worst I'm the least informed guy to push back on you on this, right? So but I have to try a little. So let me do one more. So here is the Israeli occupation pours cement into the water springs at the El Hira area south of Hebron to block and prevent Palestinians from using their water in agriculture. So we don't have to play it. It's all right.
Yeah.
So that's happening.
And I don't know enough about that, Jimmy, to be able to, address it.
So let's do one more. Here's from Max Blumenthal. He says Israel's apartheid army leveled Sharuk Tower today in Gaza City. I remember doing some interviews there a few years ago after climbing close to a dozen flights during a blackout. It's home to many media offices, which is precisely why it was targeted. And that was a major residential tower in Israel bombed in Gaza. And there was a bunch of middle class families that lived there. So let's watch this. So there it is.
You know what?
So that's not going door to door. And then here is Israel forces forcibly expelled a Palestinian family and demolished their home. So if you say that they're all, it sounds like you're saying all the Palestinians are terrorists.
But listen,
and there's collective
the Israel Supreme Court has said that Israel has a policy that if a facility is used by terrorists, a home, that they can plow into the home. That's a policy. That is a military policy, but they don't kill the people in the home deliberately. And I think that's if you have limited objectives and they're proportional, that sounds proportional to me. Now, in terms of
they blew up the fucking building, Bobby.
Yeah, you blow up the building, and that's proportional to you?
Jesus.
That is proportional?
But the Israeli lobby told me to say this, so I've got to say it.
But they have a policy.
It's a policy. Everybody follows
They have
policy,
a policy.
right? Nobody didn't ever not follow a policy and just bomb the shit out of a building they felt like bombing, right? That's never happened. What a fucking...
Yeah, it's like we say we have policies to not be racist in this country, but there's still racism. Like,
right.
We have policies for our police to follow protocol. They don't follow protocol. Policies mean jack shit.
Yeah,
like,
it's words on paper that you can point to and say, but we have a policy.
It's like to say
as we're bombing them.
To act like he's somehow not full-on establishment, dyed in the wool, 100% establishment person. And people are like, he's anti-establishment. He's a threat to the... No, he's 100% establishment with a pedigree. That's what RFK is.
Yeah, and I called this out early on. I called it out. I was like, he's going to be like the new Bernie. Like, he's really going to be like the new Bernie. This is going to be the same fucking bullshit. And I called it out, and I got dogpiled on fucking Twitter. People were pissed that I said it. Well, guess what? I'm not being proven wrong. Okay.
And when he loses the primary and says, "Oh, you got to vote for my buddy Joe."
Yeah, he told everyone to vote for his good friend Joe Biden, like last time. I'm pretty sure, didn't he? Same thing with Cornel West. They both they've all done it. So we need to stop pretending like we're getting anywhere and like we're actually not having deja vu every 3 years with the same political football, with the same pundits, the same talking heads, whether it's independent media or on the big, MSM. The same thing is happening.
Mm-hmm.
They're echoing around the same kind of people.
Always
the same thing. All right, let's get back to this. Steve was like, this is like the longest 29-minute video ever. I'm like, I know, because it's so bad. Because RFK is just like nonstop, just like bad point after bad point after bad point.
Spewing nonsense.
It's all awful.
Yeah, he needs the barf emoji in front of his face.
Yes.
I know, right?
Damn.
That tower in Gaza, I would love to research that, which I will do.
Okay.
And find out what the justification. And I love Max Blumenthal, but I do not think he's objective on Israel. I think his reporting on Israel is not it needs to be questioned.
Okay. Well, here's what I would ask. Just like Peter Hotez ducked you and Joe Rogan. I would love, because Max is the guy to talk to about this, not me. So would you do an interview with Max, because he would be able to talk to you about this way better than I can. I'm really not good at this.
Yeah, I would love to talk to Max.
Yeah, I mean, Max is a great guy. He's an
Yeah.
honest.
Unmute.
I wonder, I really
I
wonder
have-
what was going on his phone at that time, because it looks like he was looking at his phone.
Yep.
And I'll tell you guys, we have the proof of what happened because this was like a day ago. So the day after RFK agreed to Jimmy Dore's proposal to publicly discuss his pledge of unconditional support of Israel with Max, this is a Twitter thread. We can show it after. His comms director was dialing me up to offer a series of unbelievable excuses as to why this could not happen in the foreseeable future. So, as soon as RFK says, yes, I'll do it, the next day, his comms person is telling Max Blumenthal that no, they can't. So I just want to let everybody know that. And I have the actual Twitter thread, and we can show it after we're done with the video. Hey, Dingo.
Honest, he's a straight shooter.
Oh, whoops.
And so so here, these can't all be terrorists, right? And they're
Well, no.
turn it all the way down.
Yeah, well, like I said, Israel has a policy that if a home is used for terrorist activity, that they plow it under. It's not a great policy, because what happens immediately is that the government of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza immediately pay to rebuild the home. I don't think it's effective, but I think it's proportional. Yeah, I think it's likely to discourage terrorism. Terrorism means the murders of Jews. It doesn't mean attacking a military target. And that is the objective. Let's kill as many individual Jews as possible. And that's, that's just wrong. And we are subsidizing, they have this whole program called the Play to Slay, or Pay to Slay. If you kill a Jew, you're taken care of for life. If you go to prison, you're paid a salary while you're in prison, and your family is taken care of. And it's, I don't think we should be paying for that.
So I know. So you don't agree that Israel is an apartheid state, even
Not at all.
I know, but doesn't pretty much every human rights organization say it is?
Yeah, but
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
It took him so much to get him to just yes. It was very reluctant, honest. Yes, everybody says that yes, it is a terrorist organization, but he just refuses to acknowledge it. And now he's going to give you guys excuses as to why.
Yeah. It's like, where to even start? I mean, him acting like Israel is not an apartheid state when so many different organizations and the United Nations have said that it does fall under the confines of an apartheid because of the disparity in treatment. This is where I'm like, this is a guy that in some areas I agree with him. And he's pretty intellectual. He's fairly well educated and knows quite a bit. And for someone who's very seemingly pro science, follow the science where it leads and look at studies and all of that. It's then where is that same mindset when it comes to Palestine and the situation that's going on there?
That's the problem with the shit libbery. When you are a shit lib, you simply point out other people's propaganda that's convenient for you and ignore the stuff that's inconvenient for you to accept or admit is also propaganda. And that's how it works. It's just it's a little dance between, well, that's not real and that's not real, but this is real, Bobby. You don't have the wherewithal to actually read about a zillion published things about that conflate that conflict with everything that you're saying. It's How do you just turn a blind eye to that? That's not someone who's informed on this. He's being told what to say.
And
Yeah.
that's what makes him as a candidate for presidency really kind of scary. We already know
Yes.
that these establishment Democrats have strings
Exactly.
being pulled. And I would say anyone going up for a presidential candidacy has got some strings being pulled somewhere.
100%. The entire thing is an orchestrated event. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
There's no surprise in this. The only people who are surprised are the people that think it's actually a valid thing, and it's not just writing a letter to Santa Claus. You know, those are the people that are surprised every 4 years, and they get sucked back into the most important election of their life.
Yeah.
Every 4
time.
years, man, since I was paying attention and looking forward to voting, when I can remember being 16 going, wow, this is holy crap, and trying to learn as much as I could about everything that already happened and believing all the bullshit Cold War fucking nonsense. Like, oh my God, you have to like learn a bunch of stuff and then realize that at least 70% of what you picked up along the way is just narrative, and you have to actually slice off all that narrative. That's like the fat on the outside of the good part of the meat. You know what I mean? It's like, it's insane. It's
Exactly.
just crazy.
And you cannot get people to go to war without a level of propaganda and misinformation.
Right,
That's
of course.
how you have to do that. And unfortunately, for us here in the United States, we've been fed so much propaganda for pretty much since like television and media became so prominent amongst everyone.
Since the start of TV, it's been a
Yeah.
more and more refined thing as it progressed from the days of radio onward.
It's called programming for a reason.
Yep. They live.
Exactly. It is called programming for a reason.
All right, I'm gonna mute us. I swear we're gonna get through this. I swear we will. But it's really good to be able to debunk a lot of like, what was said and really, like pick apart what RFK is saying, because that's exactly why we're watching it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
Yes.
well,
why aren't they saying that? Why do those same organizations not criticize the killing of gays in Iran and all of these other Arab countries?
They don't.
Oh, they know. Israel last year had more condemnation by the UN official resolutions than all nations combined, more than Myanmar, more than China, more than any other nation. Everybody is signaling out Jews, and I would say that's anti-Semitism. What I say, and I do not believe that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. I don't co-sign, for Netanyahu or Likud. But if you are leveling criticism without leveling the same criticism about people who are doing much worse things, then the question is, why not? That has to be anti-Semitism. There's no problem criticizing Israel, but applying a different standard to Israel than you used to apply to any other country in the world is anti-Semitism.
Would you agree that Gaza is an open-air prison?
Well, I would say that Gaza, I don't think, listen, Gaza is self-rule, right? Gaza is self-rule. It's not occupied. It's self-rule.
Well, they don't have freedom of movement.
Well,
that makes it a prison.
Well, why doesn't Jordan open up Jordan to the Palestinians?
I'm not smart enough to answer that.
Okay,
I don't know.
Because Jordan is not Palestine. They are two different locations.
Geography is fun.
Say that again.
And why should they have to go to Jordan? They shouldn't have to go to Jordan in order to feel safe and protected. And Jordan already has a refugee crisis because of this shit. Like, they have so many different refugees coming into their country. The reason why places like Egypt, Jordan, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other, Lebanon. It's like the reason why these three countries are struggling so much is because they do have so many different refugees coming from not just places like Palestine, but they've also got millions of people coming from areas of Africa that are being completely decimated because of the actions from the United States and European nations and the UK, because of the endless wars and famine and drought and their inability to have any level of agency within the countries that they live in. They have so little choice in the matter, and they're trying to save themselves and their families. Yet he's trying to act like Israel is some, poor Israel. They have no agency. They have the most agency of any country within the Middle East because they're being funded by everyone that doesn't live in the Middle East. Like, because the US and the allied nations like Europe and the UK, they need Israel because Israel is wanting to expand more from what they've already done. And there's also the fact that Israel, Jerusalem, where Palestine is located, there is a plethora of resources and connections. I mean, it's not called the Holy Land just for shits and giggles. There's a lot there. There's a lot of history there. There's also a lot of history when you look in countries like Egypt and Yemen and Syria and Libya and Sudan. All of these different places have been the birthplace of lots of different things, and there's so much resources to be had in that area, which is why countries like the United States have to do their never-ending war policies so that they can get the resources and take them from the citizens of those countries, turn them into refugees, and then critique the countries that have the refugees there because it's like, oh, they don't have good human rights in Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
He's so full of shit.
I know, but that's why I was like, wow, I just couldn't believe that we already had it on the books to talk about, like Palestine and what's happening there, and then this just like felt, and I was like, oh my gosh, people are really in a buzz about this interview. I'm like, maybe we should look at it, and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, I think we're gonna have to do a reaction to this because it's just jam-packed. I mean, like, this whole thing is just jam-packed with a bunch of propaganda, and I'm like, we need to do this. But yes, I'm gonna mute again and let us